Welcome to the Fertility Podcast. I'm Natalie Silverman, your host. I've been using my voice in my work for about 15 years now. I used to be on the radio. Now I'm podcasting and do a lot of voiceover work. Now, the Fertility Podcast has a whole host of episodes for you, from adenomyosis to zero sperm. It's total A to Z of all sorts of things that affect you on your fertility journey. I'm mum to a little boy called Phoenix after having successful ICSI treatment, and that was my reason for starting the podcast. And I hope that if you found us, then you'll realise that you are not alone. This podcast is to help educate and empower you. I brought together as many experts and tried to share as many of your stories as possible. And I now have my wonderful co-host.
I'm Kate Davis, a fertility nurse consultant, and I'm adamant that we can all do so much better at understanding our fertility. I'm really passionate about teaching you to take ownership of your fertility, teaching you practical steps, emotional coping strategies, and lifestyle changes that you can make to hopefully optimise your chances of conceiving.
Now you know who we are. All you need to do is enjoy the show. Welcome to one of our Meet the Makers episodes. And the point of this is where we find out about something that you have created, whether it's a business or it's a product, it's an idea that's in development as a result of your fertility struggles. It's something that Kate and I are quite fascinated about in terms of where it takes you and what comes, the good that comes out of the bad. And Kate, I know we're always interested to hear more, aren't we?
Yeah, because I do find it really interesting, and actually, you know, how amazing is it to get inspired by your own fertility journey that then creates a wonderful product that's going to help other people, or a fantastic resource, whatever it is. I just think it's such an amazing thing to do. I wish I could be anywhere near that creative.
So far this year, we've shared the story of Lucy, who's mother of one on Insta, and she set up the Rainbow Running Club. And today we're going to welcome Emma. Emma and her husband have gone into business together, and we're going to hear about what they're doing and why they're doing it. And when we were just chatting with Emma, I was explaining that I wanted to know more about Emma's story, and she went, "Do you want to know how my husband and I met?" And I was like, "Oh no, we can't go that far back." But apparently there's a story. So Emma, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
You've got us intrigued because Kate read a bit on your website that I didn't. So come on, let's hear the story of how you met your hubby.
Okay, so I was 3 weeks off going travelling around the world by myself. I'd come out of a relationship, was disillusioned, packed in a kind of high-powered job, and I was like, right, I'm off travelling. And a friend of mine who'd recently got married, Louise, sent a message, which I thought was just to myself, on Facebook Messenger with a link to her wedding video, asking us to watch it, and if we liked it, pop a like on there to get a discount for her from her photographer. So I had a look, and I noticed this guy on the video, who I realised was her then new brother-in-law. And I think I made a childish, embarrassing comment like, "Oh, I loved your video. Isn't your new brother-in-law really hot? Swoon thud." And then sent it, and I went off to my dinner. I could hear my computer going ping, 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 ping. And what I'd actually done is I'd pressed reply all.
Yes. And
it had gone to everybody who'd been to the wedding, including the guy himself, Adam, who I'm now married to, and his mum and everybody else. So I was absolutely mortified, as you can imagine.
At the wedding, though, had you made eye contact? Had you exchanged words? Had there been any kind of moments shared between you?
I wasn't at the wedding. So I'd literally received the link of a video from the wedding, and she was looking for likes so that she could get a discount on the video. So I looked at it, was like, "Oh, that's so lovely. He's nice," but a really kind of flippant comment. I wasn't interested in looking for a boyfriend. I was just about to go travelling, and I sent it to him direct. So I think he sent me a message along the lines of, "You're an idiot," or something like that. We began chatting. And then he invited me out, so we went on a couple of dates, and then off I went travelling.
Hilarious.
Stayed in touch, and then unfortunately his dad passed away from cancer, and then he decided that he wanted to kind of get away, and he came and joined me in Australia, and then never left. That was it.
What a romantic story.
Yeah.
I know. So at our wedding, he had it on a PowerPoint presentation, the actual messenger conversations for everybody to look at and just remind them.
Oh no.
Cringe.
Well, the fact that you're in business together shows the levels that your relationship can go to, because
Yes.
that's no mean feat. So, I mean, brilliant start. And obviously we know that it doesn't all go to plan, because that's why we're talking. And
Yeah.
the difficulties, were they apparent early on, or was there some trying and then some revelations of what might be going on?
Yeah, so we got back from travelling and we thought we'd just kind of casually try. We just decided to have a lot more sex and see what happened. And then kind of nothing was happening, maybe 6 months in. And then we kind of thought, right, we need to start trying, which we did. And then it was kind of getting towards a year and we thought, we should really be pregnant by now. Because I think you just kind of presume that it will just happen and that kind of thing doesn't happen to you, it happens to other people, I guess is what we thought. So then we went to the doctors who did some kind of initial tests which showed some problems on both sides. We were then referred through to gynecology, who did more tests and said, yeah, look, you're in early menopause, Emma, and Adam, you've got issues with your sperm's motility and count. So you've got about a 5% chance of IVF working, but what you need to do first is go away and lose 6 stone, Emma. So that's what I did, which was really, really, really hard. And then sadly, I went back and we were both really excited, thinking we're going to be getting a referral through to Leeds for treatment. And we were told that the goalposts had moved and that actually in our area now, your BMI had to be 30 or under. But yet down the road, it was 35 and under. And I'd got my BMI to 35, only to be told then that we weren't eligible for treatment on the NHS.
Oh, goodness. Okay.
So that was a massive blow, really, because it was hard work losing 6 stone.
I bet.
Yeah. And,
over what period of time? How long did it take you to lose it?
Just a bit less than 2 years. And we were advised at that point that we should maybe think about going privately. Thank you. But yeah, it was really difficult. We began to look into kind of private treatment and stuff, but then realised just how expensive it was to have treatment in the UK. And there was no kind of money pot. We'd saved this amount of money and it would have probably covered perhaps one cycle in this country, but then that would have been it. We had to put off things like buying a house. We lived with my parents for a bit, putting on hold our lives really. And I was worried that with a 5% chance that, we have one shot and it doesn't work, then that was going to be it really. So that's how we kind of began researching fertility treatment abroad.
What made you think, oh, we'll look abroad? Was it cost initially?
Yeah, initially cost. And I'd say probably as people, we're probably quite daring people. So we're not kind of fazed by stuff. I mean, like I say, I booked a round the world ticket on my own and went travelling off on my own. And I'm kind of probably one of life's adventurous types, as is Adam. And I was just so desperate, like we all are, aren't we, to have a baby.
Yeah.
And then I began to kind of look on forums and kind of, do some research and take a bit of control back really, and found some awesome clinics and, talking to other women and other couples in forums that have used these places and thinking, actually, do you know what, why not go abroad?
When you were doing your research, Emma, was there at the time a place that you could go to get answers to your question? Or was it very much up to you to look around, try and looking at various different resources? There was no kind of, I guess, no one-stop shop where you could get all the information that you wanted.
Yeah, sadly, no one-stop shop. I'm probably quite geeky when it comes to stuff like this. So I am the kind of person that, likes to dot the I's and cross the T's and really look into things. Of course, there are forums where you can go and you can chat to people who have had first-hand experience of certain clinics, which I did, and I'd look into things like safety, what they specialised in. We had loads and loads of consultations. Lots of the clinics abroad offer you free Skype consultations. So instead of spending 500 quid on one in this country, we were able to have several abroad. And then you can ask much more detailed questions and get those specific answers back. And we kept all of the information for the research that we did. And then, like I say, I had various consultations to make our decision and decided on a clinic in Prague.
And were you able to, did you go and have all the treatment there, or was there any kind of satellite link up in the UK?
We had most of our treatment there. There are things that you need to plan and organise in the UK. So your prescriptions, for example, would be sent across from the clinic. You would then need to get that medication yourself. You could get medication shipped from the clinics, or you could go and obviously arrange for it to, get it from your local Asda or something like that. Things
There's
like
also,
ultrasounds.
yeah, I was going to say blood tests and ultrasounds that you can get done in the UK, can't you, to make it a little bit easier for
That's
yourself.
right. Yeah, so all of that kind of stuff we had done here, because a lot of that you need before you actually physically go out there for your treatment. So there's quite a lot to organise while you're in the UK, and then obviously you then send that across to the clinic for them to use.
Do you think, Emma, that people are put off initially by looking at treatment abroad because they anticipate that it will be such a hassle that you have to really be planning, and that actually it could be a lot to think about to get yourself over to where you need to be? Do you think that's one of the barriers to why couples may choose not to look into it initially?
Yeah, because it's a minefield anyway, isn't it? IVF, fertility treatment, is a minefield. And the place that you're in at that time is, well, I was in at that time, is horrific, isn't it? And you've got so much on your mind, and you need to be focusing on yourself and your own well-being. And there is a lot to organise, and that's kind of where the idea came from, because particularly the first and second time we organised it, because we actually ended up having 3 cycles, I remember saying to Adam, we just need a magic fairy to kind of sort this stuff out. Like, I don't know where to get the medication from, and how are we going to get the drugs abroad, and how do we keep them cool, and where do we go for an ultrasound? And I've got a question, but I've not had an answer back, and it's not a massively important question, but it is to me, in terms of from the clinic and stuff. So it's kind of, the idea of the business is to fill that gap. We can't answer medical questions because we're not, medical practitioners, but in terms of kind of practical stuff and the emotional side, we can. And I think it does put people off. And I think the other thing that puts people off is they worry about safety. Is it as safe as having it in the UK? Which is obviously, a really good point, isn't it? Because we've got such high standards of care in the UK.
Well, this is the thing that people need to be aware of, is that we have the HFEA in the UK that regulates the clinics here. And for example, at the Fertility Show, we had a session talking about having treatment abroad. We had clinics predominantly from Spain and Portugal talking about it. And there isn't that regulation, but like you say, there's the consultations and there's a whole lot of different information that you can ask from them. In terms of success rates, Kate, I don't know whether that's something that you want to talk more about. I mean, you can ask the clinic to tell you their success rates, and then you can compare them back to UK, guidelines. All you can do is ask the information. They have to give you the information, don't they?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, you can ask that question. I suppose we're lucky in the UK because of the HFEA. Every clinic has to put their figures through to the HFEA so that the HFEA then can publish those figures. So they're ratified by the HFEA. And I guess that potentially could be of concern for couples that they might not have that ratification because you're going by what the clinic tell you, I guess. I don't know. In your experience, Emma, could you find out more? Could it be more rigorous in your?
I mean, it's obviously they've got something different, I suppose, in the rest of Europe. So the clinics that we would suggest and work with are ones that are accredited by the ISO, which is the International Organisation for Standardisation, located in the EU. So that basically means that they do a very similar job as ours does here. So treatment needs to conform to strict standards of care as outlined in EU law. And they ensure that clinics follow all the statutory and regulatory requirements. So that, there is something in place, but it's just different to our country, isn't it? Because every country is different. So, but that's where you need to be asking those questions at consultation. And I think, as part of our service, we are not saying to you, go to our clinic in Prague, it's definitely going to be right for you. If you were a same-sex couple, they wouldn't treat you in the Czech Republic. If you were a 50-year-old lady who wanted to have treatment, they wouldn't treat you in the Czech Republic. So what we do is we look at people's circumstances and we come back with 3 clinics, and we want them to go and have those consultations and then feel and ask those questions and decide who's right for them. It's not about us saying to them, you must go to this clinic. We're completely independent. We do not take a fee from any clinics. So all of our kind of recommendations are based on a client's wants and needs. But it's really important to ask those questions, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you can imagine, talk us through what happens when a couple comes to you, and what kind of, if you imagine going through the pathway that you go through with a couple, explain to us what kind of support you give and how you'd see that couple right the way through the process. Yeah,
so to start off with, they have a free, totally no obligation consultation with myself or Adam to explain kind of their story and where they're at. And then if they decide that they want to go ahead, like I say, we'll come back with 3 clinics that we believe match their needs. And if they want, they can go ahead with, up to 3 consultations with those clinics which we would set up for them. And then we'll help them fill out all of their pre-consultation paperwork. If they need to get, a pre-treatment ultrasound or any blood work done that they haven't got, we can help them arrange in terms of where to access that within the UK. Also, when they go ahead with treatment, you get sent your treatment protocol, your timetable. So, trying to understand that, I think, is quite tricky, isn't it, the first time you see one of those?
Mm-hmm.
So we talk them through that. When they receive the prescriptions, we've got to make sure that they're going to go through a UK pharmacy, so we know exactly what needs to be on there. So we'd work with them on that. We then organise all of their travel arrangements. So we'll source the flights, their accommodation, the transfers, if they want acupuncture, anything that they want to make their trip more comfortable, travel tips, that kind of thing. And then obviously we're at the end of the phone in terms of that emotional support as well. So having a bad day, or they just want to howl at the moon and speak to somebody, then obviously we get it because we've been there.
Emma, after your 3rd cycle, you had success.
Yeah.
In Prague. So you went to the same clinic every time?
Yeah.
Okay. And the fact that you've got Adam there, is the intention for there to be that support for men? And have you had much engagement from men? Because we know that guys are more reluctant to talk about it all. Or is it predominantly the women that you're talking to? Because I know you early on were talking to you only a few months into launching the business.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, to be honest, this was Adam's idea, was setting up your IVF abroad. And he was like, there's just literally no support for men. And I agree, there's very little. I mean, we've helped one couple before we kind of officially launched the business, Gav and Sunita, and Gav and Adam would also talk, and he supported Gav as well. So, I work part-time, so I'm doing this part-time as well in terms of trying to build the business up. But Adam is very much involved, and if guys want to speak to Adam and want to be involved on the consultations, then we're both there as well. I had a consultation with a lady the other day who said, I'd like to, come back and speak to you again with my husband. Would that be okay? And I was like, yeah, definitely. And so the 4 of us will do a Skype consultation. So absolutely, he's there to support guys too.
That's amazing. I mean, what you're delivering is so much support, and you're taking that stress, aren't you, away from the couple, so they can concentrate on the things that they really need to be concentrating on. And you're almost like a little concierge service where you're literally organising everything for them to take that pressure away. Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, totally. Want to take the pressure away, make it nice and easy for them, but also to sort of say, look, we've been there, we've had positives, we've obviously had lots of negatives. We had a 6-year battle with infertility. I've had miscarriages now, so we get it. We understand how people feel. So it's kind of that as well.
Emma, just talking back to the weight conversation that you had, because it is something that is talked about a lot. When you delivered that information, you got to lose the weight, you went and did it. Then to go to a different kind of clinic environment, did you feel that you were treated better in terms of the weight conversation?
It never even came up. Now, there has to be safe limits, doesn't there? And I don't disagree that the slimmer you are, the healthier you are, and then your chances of conception increase. I get that. I think what I struggled with is that how can a BMI of 35 be okay 3 miles down the road, but it's not okay here? And I think that they're more liberal on weight abroad. So it never came up. I was asked what my weight was and my BMI, popped that down, and it was never mentioned. Right. Again, some places may be stricter than others, but the clinics that we spoke to, the clinics that we use, it's not an issue.
Okay, that's interesting. I mean, in the UK, I think we are quite strict on weight.
Yeah.
Obviously, BMI needs to be 30 or below ideally, but if you're heavier than that and getting to 30 is unrealistic, then that's when they would look at 35. But obviously, it's not only the fact that it will take you longer to conceive and you might have more likelihood of miscarriage, but it's also the fact that you can then have problems during pregnancy. Gestational diabetes, you can have problems during labour, and then also with epigenetics, there can be long-term problems for the baby as well, for women who are, very overweight. So it is a big concern, but what I see and what frustrates me frequently is that women are quite bluntly often told to go away and lose weight, but they're not given any support in which to do it. And I think that's where we fail.
It falls down, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, when I was told to go away and lose, yes, you've lost 6 stone, and whoops, sorry, we told you the wrong information. I was a size 14, so I wasn't big. I'm 5'10", so slimmest I've been for a long time. And I think what was really frustrating is the NICE guidelines actually state that BMI should not be something that precludes people from treatment. It should be something that you're supported on and advised on.
Exactly.
But ultimately, if you've got one shot,
more of a conversation, more holistic treatment as well.
Yeah, definitely. If you've got one go as well, because in our area it's one go in the NHS, to send somebody away after they've lost all of that weight, and like I say, in other areas of the country, BMI of 35 would be fine, was just really cruel. I mean, I love the NHS. I don't want to sound like I'm just bashing them, but how can it be safe in one area but not in another? It's ridiculous, really. But anyway, so yeah, that's something that is not as much of an issue. I don't think they would, they need to be sensible. The clinics are sensible. They're not just cowboys who treat anybody. They need to be safe as well, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So the business that you've created is called Your IVF Abroad, and as we've kind of showcased quite succinctly, it's a kind of a concierge service, and we just want to kind of highlight that there are ways to navigate your way through this, and I'm going to share some previous episodes that we've made talking about IVF treatment abroad from the patient and the clinic's point of view, because that's kind of part of what we do. And I think it's really great that there are people like yourselves and Adam. I mean, you're putting quite a lot on yourselves in terms of then having to deal with the emotional element of the people that you're helping, because as you know, and as we know, it is emotional, this topic. How are you finding that?
Do you know what? I'm okay, because I love helping people. I'm an outreach worker, family outreach worker part-time, so it's kind of in me to do that. And it was such a difficult journey. And if we can make it better for somebody, then, we're okay now. We've got our baby, haven't we? So we're one of the lucky ones. So I can deal with it now because we've kind of come through the other side. We just want to help more people have babies and to stop people getting ripped off. We had loads of consultations with clinics in this country and felt like we were being sold add-ons that had very little or no evidence. We never felt like that when speaking to clinics abroad. It was absolutely brilliant. And like I say, we just want to help people so we can deal with it now, because like I say, we're through the other side, aren't we?
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, I think it's a great thing you've created, and best of luck with it. And we just wanted to
Thank you.
give you that bit of spotlight, because I think any patient support that comes from a really kind of honest place, you've been there, you've done it, you've sadly got the t-shirt, and now trying to help others. Best of luck. And if people want to follow you, because I know you're on Insta and found the TTC community and basically shouting about what you're doing, tell people how they can find you and follow you.
Okay, so we're on Instagram, Twitter and Facebook at Your IVF Abroad, and our website is yourivfabroad.co.uk.
I'll be definitely putting some patients your way, of my patients, Emma.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I see a lot of ladies that are considering it, so yeah.
It's just nice, even if people don't do it, it's nice to know that they could even come and talk to you and get your experience. About it.
And we've been like, go away, think about it. They're not buying a dress online, are they, at half price? It's a big decision, and we're not there to push people into it. We're not setting this up to become millionaires. This is to help people, and obviously we need to cover our time, but that's what it's there for at the end of the day.
No, it's great. Well, it's been lovely chatting. Good luck.
Thank you.
And we'll speak again.
Thank you very much, ladies.
Take
Cheers.
care.
See you later.
Right. So a really interesting insight into a kind of patient example of how to help other people have treatment abroad. And we're going to have a chat with Alex Fieschi, I think I've said his name right, about an online guide called whereivf.com. And this is like a really interesting impartial guide to 8 different clinics. Kate, what do you think of it?
Well, I downloaded it, had a really good read of it, and actually I'm really impressed with the information there, because it's so unusual to find information all in one place, and it's got everything that a patient or a couple could really want to understand before making a decision to consider IVF treatment, to really understand what they will be getting from each country. And I think that's really vital.
Well, have a listen, and we hope you find this interesting. So I'm now going to welcome Alex Wieski from IVF Media. He's a co-founder of a brilliant new guide of European clinics called whereivf.com. It's an online site as well as a book. Kate and I wanted to get Alex on to explain a bit more about how the guide has been put together to carry on our theme of what to do and how to go about having treatment abroad. So Alex, welcome to the podcast.
Hello.
I know that this has been quite a lengthy project for you guys to put together. How long did it take?
It's difficult to set up the proper, I would say, measurement for the time, because we wouldn't be able to publish these guides without the knowledge we had since a few years back, based on the website that we are running, and we gather some data that we use to even have an idea to publish the guide. Picking up the right information, contacting Ministry of Health, countries, clinics, national bodies, it took us like 4 months.
I've downloaded it, Alex, and had a really good read of it. It's an impressive guide. There's so much information there. And I have to say, I think it will be so incredibly useful and a great resource for women and couples who are looking for the first steps to really understand what they need to look at for each individual country, never mind each individual clinic, because they are so different. One thing that I thought was really interesting when I was reading your guide is that you say, and I quote, "Before you trust IVF clinic success rate, read this carefully." Can you explain a little bit more about what you mean?
It doesn't matter if it's a clinic abroad or a clinic in the home country. What we know from our experience and from clinics we're visiting every month or every year, because we try to be at every clinic that is important from patient's point of view. There are some common questions that patients are asking on the beginning when they're trying to figure out which clinic is the one. There are 3 very popular questions that are asked more often. The first one is the success rate. The problem is that patients are asking about your success rates. I mean, they writing an email to the clinic and they say, okay, so what are your success rates? In most examples, patients don't know how it was measured, in what way they counted the success rates. And there are probably 10 or even more ways to show the success rates. Because clinics, from marketing point of view, they know that patients tend to pick up the clinic which is like better in terms of success rates. So they're trying to put as high as values as they can on the websites, because the website is something that advertises the business. And what we're trying to say in the guide, that be careful if you're looking at the success rates and don't make the most important thing from the success rates. And this is why we publish success rates only based on ISHRA reports. The latest report at the time we were publishing the guide was from 2012. The point is that the ISHRA is publishing this report based on the same basis, so it's like comparable between the countries. The downside is that they haven't got the data by each center. They comparing the data between countries. We just thought that it would be a good idea to show some, independent resource, impartial resource, which is ISHRA, which is collecting data from countries, not from the clinics, and showing the patients that the reality behind the success rates it can be a bit different than what they can see on the clinic's website. And the copy you are referring to about the success rates, it came from this question from patients who are asking the fertility clinics about your success rates. It's a wrong question, because patients should ask about their own prospects based on their medical history data, the diagnosis, etc., etc. So the question should be, what are my chances if you take into consideration my medical background, history, diagnosis, etc., at your IVF unit or center?
A lot of information there, and it's really interesting to hear that the regulatory information is from ESHRA, and we'll put details of what ESHRA is if you're listening and don't understand, because in the UK the HFEA regulates our clinics. In Europe and elsewhere there isn't that same regulatory guide, which is kind of the reason for you making this guide, and it's to help people know what else to consider, because one of the big concerns is ease of getting there, being understood. What other things did you find that people wanted to know when it comes to what they need to know about choosing a clinic abroad?
We know 2 different perspectives, because one of them is a perspective of the patient. They're asking 3 important questions. The first is success rates. The second question, which is asked very often, is obviously the cost. And the third one is treatment time. I mean, the time frame of the process, how long I will have to stay in the country, got an impact on the cost as well, because of the accommodation, flights, etc., etc. How many times I would have to go. I used to work for IVF clinic for 10 years. And I got this impression that the reason the patients are asking these questions and the nature of these questions is like the more successful, the better, the cheaper, the better, and the quicker, the better, which is completely wrong because you can't connect these three factors in one. I mean, if you got the successful treatment, I can assure you it won't be the cheapest one and it won't be the quickest one. From the other side, if you would like to have a quick treatment, I have some doubts it's going to be successful and if it's going to be cheap. These questions are asked by patients and this is how it looked from the patient's perspective. But from the clinic's perspective, it's a bit different story. I try to ask myself sometimes why patients are not asking about the doctor specialization or the clinic specialization because there is a difference if there is a patients with repeated pregnancy loss, miscarriages, and they trying to find the center because of the success rates. If I would be a patient, I would start with looking for somebody who is specializing with patients or dealing with patients who are having problems with miscarriages after the IVF. Point is, when I visit the clinic and asking them what patients are asking for, they never say they're asking about the specialization. Never. They're asking about the success rates, costs, and the time frame.
And I guess one of the other questions that they might have, and also possibly one of the reasons why people are hesitant perhaps about looking outside their own country for IVF, is surrounding the different types of laws and how they're all very complex and different in each country. What information does your guide give about the laws for each country and how that differs?
Yeah, okay. This is probably the main reason that this guide has been published because, as you said, this is one of the reasons patients are looking outside of the country for the treatment. And we tried to include in the guide everything we could. We started with the age of the woman. It differs between the countries. So there are countries who support IVF patients only up to 49. There are others like 52 or 55 or 50. There are other factors like if country allow treatment for single women, for lesbian couples, if the egg donors are anonymous or non-anonymous, etc., etc. So particularly these things are covered in the guide. However, they are not always coming from the law, which is in the particular country, because sometimes a good example is Spain, where if you look at the clinic's websites, it says in most of them they say that they treat patients up to 50 years old. I mean the woman age. According to law, there is no really restriction in Spain. They've got the national body who's regulating and giving the guidelines and the recommendations for IVF clinics, and they made the decision that they will be treating patients up to 50. We are having inquiries from patients who are saying, I found the clinic who is supporting patients with 52 or 53 in Spain. Is it really possible? Yeah, well, it is because it's up to the particular IVF center or unit. These factors are the most important because that can narrow down the number of countries the patients can go. There are other things like maximum number of embryos to transfer can be different for egg donation and for treatment with own eggs. And I think that's it. That's pretty basic things. But what we know from our experience that patients just don't know. And in the beginning, they are not aware that these differences may influence the treatment type or even if they really can go to this particular country.
Because what you've done as well in the guide is you've put all sorts of website links for the different countries, and there's 8 countries that you've focused on: Spain, Czech
Yes.
Republic, North Cyprus, Greece, Ukraine, Poland, Russia and Latvia. And I know that there was challenges along the way of getting access to all the information that maybe you wanted, which you've made quite clear in the guide, but there's loads of reference. I think that's the best thing because it might seem like there's a lot of information for people to take on. You've put websites and even email addresses. Where could you not get any answers from, just finally?
There were 3 countries that we couldn't get an answer. That was Spain, which is probably the most often chosen destination.
Quite surprising that you didn't get any
Yes.
answers.
The second one was Greece, and the third one was Russia. We were trying hard to get any information from these countries, but it was really not possible because they didn't answer emails. We tried to call. So in Spain, for example, it turned out that they couldn't really speak English. We don't speak Spanish, so we couldn't find the the way to communicate. In Greece, similar situation. However, Greece, I believe, is probably the only country on our list, that where we find the list of certified centers that are allowed to treat patients in Greece on their special website, which we obviously publish in the Greece section of the guide, where every patient can go in and check out if the center they are like looking for is on the list and it's certified to treat the patients. And this website is also in English, so it's very good for from the patient's perspective. And the third country is Russia. No answer. We're trying, but no luck so far.
Okay. Well, I think there's still a lot of information for people to go on. Thank you for your time. Best of luck. We'll put the details of the website because you can get the downloadable version whereivf.com. Are there any other destinations that you're looking to have more information available on?
We are working on extending our guide and put some other destinations like Finland, Turkey, like Estonia, and there are many other countries where somebody asked us on the fertility show why these 8 countries are included in the guide. And it's simply because from our data 4 years back from 2 websites that we are having patients on, inquiries, etc., it's based on more than 5,000 or 6,000 patients inquiries. We know that these countries are very popular.
Right, so loads of information there. Interesting to hear about the clinics that you didn't get any response from.
Yeah, really interesting. And also I noticed when I had a quick look through the list, he hasn't approached Italy. And I thought that was really interesting, especially because a patient said to me the other day who is from Italy but living elsewhere at the moment and is considering going back home for treatment. And she said to me that the Italians, and I don't know if this is correct, this is her opinion, the Italians don't trust their services for IVF in Italy. There's a lack of trust. I know.
That's interesting. Okay.
Really interesting.
Well, let us know about the clinics that you've had experience of abroad, because we're always keen to kind of share the conversation more. You can either get in touch with us on our socials. I'm at Fertility Poddy.
And I'm at Your Fertility Journey.
Or you can email us info@thefertilitypodcast.com. And don't forget, of course, you can go into the closed Facebook group for the podcast, which is called Talk Fertility. You can join up and we can always continue the conversation there. So I hope you found that interesting. Check out the show notes for this episode where we can find a link to both Emma and Adam's service and the guide that we've just been talking about. One other thing that you can do for us is you can subscribe to this very podcast to make sure you don't miss an episode, because last week we launched our first tea break pod, which has been going down really well.
I've had some amazing feedback about the tea pod. I was going to tell you all about that. People are loving it.
The idea is it's just a short 10-minute episode of the podcast. You need to subscribe, which you can do via your favourite podcast app, because they're going to be kind of intermittent when Kate and I have got some more of your questions. So do email those through to info@thefertilitypodcast.com, or, of course, get in touch with us via our socials that we've just given you. And if you can rate and review, that would be amazing. We love a 5-star rating, actually hearing in public what you think, as well as telling us, because obviously that's lovely. And we'll share them where we can on our socials. Thank you, as always, for your support. And until the next time.